I've been privileged to visit the Holy Land twice. And in one of my visits there, our tour included a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. And it was a wonderful experience because the Sea of Galilee, the coastline, has changed very little since the time of Jesus. So while we were out on the sea, we were seeing what Jesus saw whenever he was on boats on the Sea of Galilee, such as today. And so it was an amazing experience. And when we got on the boat, it was a bright, sunny day. We got out into the middle of the lake, and all of a sudden, clouds came in, and rain started to pour down in torrents, and we had to rush under the canopy that they had on the boat, which is always there. And then by the time we parked the boat, and only a half hour later, the sun was out again. And I remember we asked our tour guide if that was unusual, and he says, oh no, he goes, this is a regular occurrence on the Sea of Galilee. You never know what the weather's going to be. It's quite unpredictable. And so it verifies what Mark is telling us here about the day that the apostles were out in this boat, and then all of a sudden a storm came up. I mean, they didn't have meteorological tools back then to have a weather forecast. And of course, things came so quickly that there was probably a nice, peaceful evening. They got on the boat, and before they knew it, there's a storm, and the waves are breaking over the boat, which was not very big, and it was already ready to sink. And here they are, all of them trying to find whatever buckets or using their hands just to bail water overboard. It's an all-hands-on-deck situation. And they look over, and Jesus is sound asleep on a cushion in the back of the boat. So they came and woke him and said, teacher, don't you care that we're about to drown? Get up and help us. Pick up a bucket and start bailing. This is all hands on deck here, Lord. And so he gets up, and it's almost comical. He says, quiet, be still. The storm comes down. He looks at them and says, why were you so frightened? Don't you yet believe? And I've always imagined them right back to sleep on the cushion and leaving the apostles there with their mouths hanging open. Who is this guy that even the winds and the sea obey him? They probably were expecting him to just pick up a bucket and help them bail water, and instead he calms the storm completely. Absolutely amazing experience for them. And of course, the experience with Jesus and the apostles that day has perfect relationship to our own lives. We face all sorts of different storms in our lives each and every day. Sometimes they're physical, sometimes psychological, spiritual, emotional, many different things. And sometimes when you're going through the storms of life, does it seem to you like Jesus is asleep? That he's not, here you are going through something and you don't see any sign that he's there? Well, if you think so, then wake him up and say, Lord, hey, I'm going through a storm here. Can you help me? And maybe he will end the storm. He'll just say, quiet, be still, and miraculously the storm will pass by. Or maybe he'll just pick up a bucket and start helping bailing water until everything passes. When you think about it, that day on the Sea of Galilee, if Jesus had just picked up a bucket and helped them bail water until they got safely to the other side, he still helped them out. He still kept them safe from the storm. But sometimes I think maybe we only want the Lord to heal the storm, to give us these big, bold moments where he just says, quiet, be still, and all of our troubles go away. And maybe sometimes he does do that. I mentioned this last night at Mass, and some people came up with stories afterwards where they would insist that that's exactly what God did. But then other times we know, no, he doesn't do that. But he helps us bail water, and he helps us stay afloat until the storm passes. And I think if we look back in our own lives, every one of us could probably relate a story about that. Times that we've been through stressful things, difficult times, that if somebody had told us beforehand that we were going to endure that, we would have said, no, there's no way I could ever endure that. I would fall apart. I would just completely collapse. Oh, I would never be able to survive that. But we did. We survived it, and we're still here, worshiping God, and we discover our faith got us through. Thinking, for example, of people who lost loved ones during 9/11. And that happened without any notice whatsoever. Nobody knew what was going to happen that day. And I think if somebody had told anyone who had lost a loved one, and here in St. Anne's we had people lose loved ones in 9/11, if they were to tell them the day before, by the way, tomorrow your loved one is going to die in a terror attack, they would have said, no, I could never survive that. I could never live through it. But they did. You did. The COVID gave us very little warning, while it wasn't quite as much a shock as 9/11, because we knew that it was coming from China, and then once the first cases in California, or Seattle, I think it was, were reported, we knew it was only a matter of time before it hit New York, and we probably might have said, oh, if I lost a loved one to the coronavirus, I could never survive that. And some of you did lose loved ones to the coronavirus. But you notice, we're here. We did get through. The Lord helped us through. No, he didn't stop the storm, but he helped us stay afloat. He was there giving us the strength we need each and every day to get through the difficulties. And I'm sure all of us could look at some time in our life when we look back and say, how did I get through that? How did I do it? If I had known before then, I would have collapsed. But we did it. And that was because the Lord was with us each and every step of the way. And if we'd ever be, so that should strengthen us in the future, that if we're ever tempted to turn to the Lord and say, Lord, where were you when I needed you? The answer would come back closer than you ever imagined. Think of San Silverio, who we honor today. And for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with the story of San Silverio, he was a saint of the early 6th century, 536, he became Pope. And when he was elected Pope, he never expected to be elected Pope. It was not anything he was looking for, but they all elected him, and so he accepted it. And there was a young deacon who expected to be made Pope. And when he was elected Pope, a man by the name of Virgilius, he was furious that he was not made Pope, instead that Silverio was. And so he used all of his influence with the Empress and other people to ruin the new Pope. He wrote false letters in his name claiming that he was siding with the Goths to have them come in and invade the city of Rome. All sorts of horrible things, and he got enough fake news going through enough mud to make some of it stick, and eventually he turned the Empress against him and had the Pope publicly stripped of all of his garments in a mocking situation and shipped off to Constantinople. Fortunately for him there, when the emperor heard of the situation, he was furious, and he demanded that San Silverio be returned home to Rome and have a formal trial, and that if he was found innocent, he was to be restored to the papacy with all of his rights returned to him. But when Virgilius and his people found out that this was happening, well, he sent his thugs to go and meet his ship before it even reached the shores, and they grabbed him off into the islands of Palmarola, where he was treated shabbily and maybe even physically put to death. But certainly, if he wasn't physically martyred, he was starved to death. And I'm sure if somebody had told him before he was elected Pope, you know, when you get elected Pope, this is what Virgilius is going to do to you, he probably would have said, oh, I could never survive that. The humiliation, and everything of that, and being banished to an island where I'm going to be starved to death or martyred. No, I could never do that. But he did. And he survived it as a saint in heaven. He kept his faith through all of it because Christ was with him each and every step of the way. And Christ is with us each and every step of the way. So if at any time in your life you feel you're going through a crisis, maybe it is now as we speak or sometime in the future, you feel like you're going through a storm and it seems like Jesus is asleep, that he's not helping you, well, wake him up. Call to him and say, Lord, please, I'm in the middle of something here. I need your help. And he will be there. Maybe he will miraculously calm the storm. Or maybe he'll just pick up a bucket and start bailing water until the storm passes. But either way, he will never let us down. Christ promises he will always be with us to see us through all the storms of life so that we will remain faithful to him and that we will not die, but we will keep our faith in him firm. And he will be there every step of the way. He will never let us drown. May Jesus Christ be praised. Amen.